To the Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, Professor Mpedi, the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Naidu, Program Director, Dr. Joseph, U.S. Consul General in Johannesburg, my colleague, Mr. Vincent Spera, University Deans, lecturers present, distinguished guests, and most importantly, students, Dumelang, and good afternoon. I am thrilled to be here with you. Let me just take a moment away from my prepared remarks. I am thrilled to be here with all of you today. I have spent roughly half my adult life in higher education. As a university professor, as a dean, and as a vice chancellor, I believe deeply and passionately about the transformative power of education. I am a fourth generation educator. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, my mother, all were educators. And I am a fourth generation college educated African American man. Which is rare. And so I am thrilled to be here with all of you and happy to have the opportunity to say a few words and then get to the really important, the spicy part, the questions and answers. National Heritage Month offers us a great opportunity to reflect on the cultural and historical connections between South Africa and the United States. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today, and I am passionate about engagements in academic settings, and I look forward to hearing your questions and hearing more about what you have to say. I am also incredibly proud of all of you. You are not simply earning a degree here at the University of Johannesburg. You are learning to think critically and to challenge your deeply held beliefs and ideas. And these are crucial skills that I am certain you will use throughout your careers and indeed throughout your lives. So I encourage you to keep it up because it all pays off. So here's my thesis up front. South Africa and the United States they both have relationships with many countries. And some of these relationships are very special. But I believe that there is something particular and perhaps even unique about the relationship between the United States of America and the Republic of South Africa. And that uniqueness is rooted in the nature of our respective societies and our experiences as governments that were founded on both ideas and on principles, and indeed through struggle. The commitment to human flourishing and dignity pursued through equality and justice. That is the shared link. So I'm going to share with you today 3 historical anecdotes that corroborate this position. And then I'll give you a chance to share your thoughts and ideas, give you a chance to ask your questions, and to participate in what I am absolutely certain will be a very lively discussion. So I choose to speak to you today about this special relationship between the United States and South Africa because I do not think that special relationship, frankly, has gotten enough attention. Over the last year, what there has been is a lot of attention on high-level political issues, some of it positive and some of it contentious. And that makes sense because we have seen the highest level of engagement between South African and U.S. government officials that we've seen in more than a decade. President Biden and President Ramaphosa are talking about how we can work together to achieve national objectives and tackle international problems. I was personally honored to be in the Oval Office of the White House when on September 16th of last year, President Biden hosted President Ramaphosa, which was the first time that a South African president had been hosted in the Oval Office in more than 15 years. Secretary Blinken and your foreign minister, Naledi Pandor, and dozens of other senior officials are engaging on a regular basis with those same goals. And we're seeing tremendous levels of engagement across government lines into the private sector and civil society on both sides of the Atlantic. We are working on tons of things, on everything from how to end the energy crisis through renewable energy to finally and fully ending the HIV epidemic. In a modern world dominated by social media and, frankly, short attention spans, it is the extreme voices that can often get the most attention. But what I can tell you is that we are talking through the issues on which we agree and on which we disagree. And along the way, we are getting things done that improve prosperity, democracy, and health in both of our nations. But today, I want to focus on something deeper than the headlines and more important even than the work of presidents, ministers, and business leaders. It is more important because it speaks to who we are as a people, as peoples, as a society, and as the principles that we cherish. Let me take you back with me more than a century to the year 1898, to the city of Durban. On March 29th, a local police officer noticed a well-dressed black man sitting at the bar in the Nchanga railway station. The officer assumed that the man was a local and addressed him in isiZulu. The man replied in English, saying that he did not understand what the officer was saying. The man went on to explain that he was an American citizen and had the right to drink wherever he saw fit. And in return, the officer arrested him and detained him in the local jail. The man was, in fact, an American by the name of Richard Collins. As a member of the famous Virginia Jubilee Singers, he had visited South Africa on a series of tours throughout the 1890s under the leadership of a Black American entrepreneur named Orpheus McAdoo. A few hours after the arrest, the American consul in Durban secured Collins' release, and the charges against him were quickly dropped. And although Collins was Black, his status as an American citizen, and especially as a member of the famous Virginia Jubilee Singers, granted him a measure of celebrity status in the eyes of the local government and the population. And his arrest ultimately caused tremendous embarrassment to the local police. For our second story, let's continue to move forward, but almost about a century to the year 1984, and from the city of Durban to the city of Washington, D.C. On November 21st, 4 Black Americans attended a meeting with the South African ambassador to the United States in Washington. The Americans had requested the meeting to register their concern over the jailing of Black South African labor leaders by the apartheid government of the day. After the meeting, 3 of the Americans, Walter Fauntleroy, Mary Frances Berry, and Randall Robinson, refused to leave the ambassador's office until the labor leaders in South Africa were released. At the time, Fauntleroy was a member of the United States House of Representatives, and Berry was a member of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, while Robinson was the head of a group called Trans-Africa that advocated for the rights of Black people in Africa and the Caribbean. In the end, just like in Durban nearly a century before, the police arrested Berry, Fauntleroy, and Robinson, all 3 of whom spent the night in jail. This trio used media coverage generated from their arrest to launch the Free South Africa movement in the United States of America. Over the course of the next 2 years, the Free South Africa movement successfully lobbied the Reagan administration to more aggressively pressure the South African government to end the racist policies of the apartheid era. Many thousands of Americans joined the Free South Africa movement, participated in protests, and yes, also went to jail in the United States in support of the liberation struggle in South Africa. For our third example, we will remain in the United States, but cross the continent and go to the city of San Francisco, California. On August 23rd, 1989, South African anti-apartheid and gay rights activist Simon Nkoli arrived in the United States for the first time. Nkoli, who was originally from Soweto, went to the United States to raise funds to develop educational materials to prevent the spread of HIV in South Africa. But when he arrived in San Francisco, he found a very different reception than Richard Collins did in Durban, or that Fauntleroy, Francis Berry, or Randall Robinson found in Washington. Nkoli was met by a delegation of Americans who told him that acting Mayor Richard Hongisto had proclaimed August 24th to be Simon Nkoli Day. Nkoli was one of the 22 defendants in the Delmas treason case in South Africa that stretched from 1984 to 1988, and which kept him in detention for almost 4 years. Americans admired Nkoli, however, because he was a Black gay man who linked the struggle against racial oppression to the struggle against homophobia. Nkoli played a critical role in convincing the ANC to support the fundamental human rights of LGBTQ plus people in enshrining in the South African Constitution the commitment that everyone is deserving of human rights, including members of the gay community. So we have before us these three examples. We have Richard Collins of the Virginia Jubilee Singers, who found one form of oppression in the United States and a very different form of oppression in Durban. In Washington, we have the founders of the Free South Africa movement, Berry, Fauntleroy, and Robinson. And we have in Simon Nkoli, a South African who found himself a surprise and unexpected hero in San Francisco. These are all stories about people, about Americans and South Africans, who were inspired by foreigners, really by strangers, but whose struggles against oppression offered meaning from one continent to another. Sometimes we need the perspective of an outsider to help to show us how to face a particular challenge. If we can honestly look at ourselves, look at our community, and indeed look at our nations through the eyes of foreign friends, we can tap into fundamental truths about who we are, and more importantly, about how we can improve. South Africa and the United States are clearly different nations with distinct histories, geographies, and cultural mosaics. At the same time, as the cases we explore today demonstrate, there is something that keeps bringing us back to each other. When we turn on the TV or go to the movies here in Johannesburg, a lot of what we see is made in America. And in America, Americans dance to DJ Zinhle, We're Maktosa by Laduma Okolo, and read the books of Zeksimda. If you ask Americans to identify the most inspiring liberation struggle icon from the 20th century, many will likely tell you the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But many Americans will also tell you Nelson Mandela. So what is it? What is this thing that somehow binds South Africans and Americans together? I'll tell you what I think it is. I think it's freedom. We are nations that were founded on the principle that every human is worthy of dignity and the opportunity to flourish and to achieve their potential. And notwithstanding that common principle, making that principle a reality in both of our nations has come at a price of great struggle and sometimes of much blood. We are nations that have faced and that continue to face hateful concepts like racism, ethnic nationalism, homophobia, and others. And in the face of those struggles, we seek to define ourselves, as Dr. King said, by the content of our character. So today, I would like to challenge us to remember all of the individuals throughout our respective histories that have made our countries, and indeed our planet, a better place. Let us emulate leaders like Simon Nkoli and all the South African and American heroes before him and since him as we lead our daily lives and strive to realize justice and equality. So I'm very grateful for your attention, but I am now very curious to hear from you, to hear what you think about these examples, about our shared histories, and about our future as partners that continue to reinforce each other's efforts to secure greater justice for all. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.